Hello and welcome to Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, religious, and ethical point of view. I'm Sean Kalin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and I'm joined today, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Reverend Michelle Penix, Lighthouse Christian Church. Dr. Reverend Kylan Gray, Creative Spirits Behavioral Health. Father Tony Smith, Archdiocese of Louisville. Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Richard Euler, retired U.S. Army chaplain. We begin this week with former President Biden's disclosure that he has stage 4 prostate cancer.
It comes just 4 months after the 82-year-old Biden left office. The former president's team saying he was diagnosed Friday after he experienced urinary symptoms and doctors found a nodule on his prostate. They say his cancer has a Gleason score of 9 out of a possible 10, indicating a more aggressive form of the disease. Medical experts say that means the cancer cells are likely to grow and spread rapidly.
How serious is this diagnosis?
It is quite serious. Once anyone is diagnosed with metastatic cancer, generally it's going to mean it's uncurable or very low likelihood of cure.
But doctors say it can be treated and managed with hormone therapy, something the Bidens say they are exploring. Tonight, an outpouring of support. Former President Barack Obama noting, "Nobody has done more to find breakthrough treatments for cancer in all its forms than Joe, and I am certain he will fight this challenge with his trademark resolve and grace." Upon hearing the news, President Trump saying he and the First Lady extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. But late today, the president shifting in tone, now asking questions.
I think it's very sad, actually. I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago, because to get to stage 9, that's a long time.
Biden's last physical as president was in February of 2024. A White House doctor declaring him fit for duty, saying routine tests identified no new concerns. The year before, doctors found and removed a cancerous skin lesion on his chest. His medical records do not indicate whether he was given a PSA test, which detects prostate cancer. But experts say that test is typically not recommended for men older than 70, and a late diagnosis is not unusual in that age group.
So panel, we come out to you. The news was quickly met with sympathy late Sunday, but by Monday, questions from both Republicans and Democrats had begun, as many wondered whether the announcement was timed to change the subject after a week of reports about his physical and mental deterioration when he was president, in the new book by CNN's Jake Tapper that was released just this past Tuesday. So your thoughts on the developments of the past week?
I think that President Biden and his family have a right to be left alone to deal with the situation that they are facing at this point in time, and not fodder for the endless news cycle. I think that that's the least the American public can do for this human being and his family.
I think we say that, there's a time for everything, and I think there is a time for sympathy, compassion, always. But then I think we need to have real discussions about the underlying issues related to the announcement and the thoughts. But first and foremost, I think morally we have an obligation to show compassion and to honor the privacy of this family during this time.
This is another opportunity for us to have some good, significant health conversations. And for men in particularly, prostate cancer it's discussed, but not in the type of way that helps men to be able to respond to their own health. And so hopefully, while the banter happens, and that tends to be the tenor of our nation now, that it doesn't take much for there to be politicized conversations around anything regarding political figures. My hope is that we use this as another opportunity to really talk about prostate cancer and the various different ways that it develops, and to encourage those who may be watching now and will be listening to this show, men who will be watching this, to go ahead and get checked out, because it is one of the leading killers, forms of cancer, rather, that men experience here in this country. And so my hope is that while yes, the family deserves the privacy that they deserve, it doesn't surprise me that people begin to start asking questions of his ability while he was in office and those types of things. That's what happens within the political discussion. But we really need to have community-wide conversations to encourage men to get checked out. And I'm hoping that men listening to this now would take this as an opportunity to look at their health and to do something that they need to do to stay healthy.
I can concur with what both of you said in that regard. My thoughts, the issue from a moral perspective I would see is the whole thing of privacy versus leadership, you know, and it seems like on one side of the coin, we want to know everything about those who are in authority over us type thing. We say we have a right to that. The right to know this stuff is, I mean, that's a universal fallacy, I think. The other side of that coin, though, is when we come to personal, we want to be personally private. We don't want anybody to take care of that, in a sense. For instance, even our own tradition, we have individuals who have medical issues, whatever, and sometimes where the leadership is critiqued, you should let us know that Father so-and-such, blah, blah, blah. But we say that's a personal, private issue for that person. Now, if Father blah, blah, blah was in President of the United States or some, you know, one of the main leaders, it does call to mind that there should be an awareness of our leadership. But even there still, what I'm hearing about this scenario is, you know, did it affect his decision-making? If you listen to the experts who talk about this disease, which it really is, there's no correlation between having prostate cancer and not having the ability to handle situations, things of this nature. So that more along the lines is the ethical issue from my perspective about the political utilization of someone's misery or whatever for the benefit of the other side of the coin. So that would be my initial comments.
And as I was reading through this, I look and say, well, okay, there's opinions here and there's opinions there. Yeah, well, does HIPAA apply when you're talking about the leader of this nation? Those kinds of things, having had that, you know, medical piece to me. But it did seem unusual that he didn't have a test for 10 years, is what it was saying in there. And I said, you know, even my expensive plans, plural, does it every year, but they won't do it 2 times in a year. And maybe they should, because there was also talk about, I was reading that there are some instances where there's the in-between where that can come up. But if you're talking stage 4 at this point, that doesn't come up in a couple of months.
That's right.
You know, that's a long period of time.
But I'm going to say, but each individual, as the experts will say, each individual case of this occurrence is individualized in a sense. You know, the 5 of us guys here, whatever, 4, is that 5? Okay. Did count right. We could all have prostate cancer, but it could be very different in each one of ours.
Oh, yeah.
So, so the difficulty I see in the political routine, again, is lumping it together and saying, you know, we should have known about this. Well, okay, there may be some validity to that.
I think one of the issues, too, is that, you know, there are so many medically nuanced avenues that we can go down. You know, I've never heard anyone who was completely satisfied with what the doctor said and when they said it. And so I think we have to keep that in mind. But I think it really brings forth the underlying issue around still trust in our, you know, institutions, trust in our leadership. You know, I know just a few months ago, we received the report that our president currently is 6'3" and 220 pounds. And I remember looking at my husband thinking, I don't know if this sizes up. And it brought to questions at that point, you know, who are these doctors and are we getting the whole truth? And so now we're here again, and I think it just undergirds what much of the public feels like about trust in our institutions and trust in what we're being told about, you know, our leaders and where they are. So I think that's a conversation that this allows to kind of be opened as well.
It does seem to lead to that whole trust issue, not just on this scenario, but in all levels. Congress, you know, president, whatever it might be, church leadership, whatever, you know. the lack of trust in this country is almost palatable.
Yeah.
So.
And this is coming to light after he left office, and it seems like it's at a moot point by now. At this point, however, in our what we get sent to us on the page 3, it said doctors reached by CNN this week said PC is not generally linked to issues of cognition. But yet another article that's quoted by ScienceDirect.com says, of note, cognitive dysfunction is frequently observed in men with PC as they age, and cognitive decline may be exacerbated by various stages of the disease by exposure to long-term ADT. Cognitive deficits may be a consequence of the cancer itself and the therapies, innate genetic susceptibility, biological factors, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And certainly, it's not that I'm sitting worrying about it, but it's certainly going to be a concern because that's what my dad died of. Among other things, he had he had 14 things wrong with him in a 6-page autopsy. So anything could have done it, but that was probably the primary.
The goodness that can come out of this is that more men will get screening, and if this helps save lives or prevent the death by prostate cancer, because prostate cancer, if it is an early discovery, you can live a long and fruitful life, and you may die. Well, everybody dies eventually, but the vast majority of people whose prostate cancer is detected early do not die of prostate cancer.
But I think that we understand person's expectation for leadership, and that person's heart are connected to leaders. Person's jobs and the work that they do are connected to the leader's ability to do the work that the leader is supposed to do. And so it's understandable people's concern.
Sure.
When, how long was this known, and why was it not shared? And I think on every level of leadership, whether political or business or religious or even family leadership, that people want to know because of their tie or whatever the basis of their relationship is. I think for me, a moral consideration is for those who tend to be critical at this moment, that they need to remember that they're living in a glass house. And when you're living in a glass house, you don't want to throw stones, because illness will come to you. And what will you do? So all of those that are talking about what should have been done and why hasn't this information been released to the public at the particular time, there's a lot of questions around that, and those are appropriate questions. But the tables will be turned one day, and there will be illness that hit you in your responsibility, in those places that you have leadership, and whatever it is that you're saying that others should be doing, make sure that you remember that so that you can be consistent with the criticism that's given.
And what clergy hasn't been in the glass house and a rural community? I made the weekly probably almost every week of what I was doing.
My point is this: if indeed President Biden discovered that he had prostate cancer as of the 21st of January this year, as far as I'm concerned, as of that day, he is former President Joe Biden, Mr. Biden, private citizen. Keyword private. If he wanted to share that after that point in time, that's his right and privilege. If he wished to sustain his privacy, that is his right and privilege.
And I think when we consider that, we have to remember, too, that, what we've said and what we've done is a predictor of how we move forward, too. And while I do think that now he is a private citizen, the office of the president is the most powerful position in the world. And I think, you know, whatever we're going to ask of all of our presidents moving forward, we have to do the same. And I think that goes back to that trust.
Yes.
You know, if we don't have trust in our leaders, if we don't have trust in the people who are taking care of our leaders, then, you know, we're in a bad shape. And I think that's where we kind of are right now, and why it's important to ask some of those questions. But I honestly don't think we'll ever get an answer.
No.
We'll never get an answer. So, but we've got to be able to respond appropriately to those questions and move on, because we don't know. And I think he has a right to keep that information until he feels comfortable sharing it.
All right, thanks for the great discussion. Thanks for watching and listening to Moral Side of the News this week. We turn now to the devastating tornado that hit Laurel and Pulaski counties this past Friday.
The frightening image, this deadly twister tearing through southeast Kentucky. You can hear the roar of the wind and see the flashes of light in Laurel County on Friday night. Cleanup is underway as those injured by the tornado are returning to see what's left.
About where the Tahoe sat now was a kitchen.
David Farler, his wife, daughter, and 4 grandchildren hid in closets in the home he built by hand, which looked like this before the tornado hit. Incredibly, his home lifted off the ground with the family inside and was carried across the street.
I was thinking, when is this going to stop? It felt like it went on forever. My wife said she was floating around.
Buried under debris, including granite countertops, the entire family made it out alive with only minor injuries, able to dig themselves out. David took me back to see what remains of the home.
You thought it was the end?
I thought it was the end. I've never come that close to death before in my life.
At least 19 people killed in this state, 17 in the county alone.
Each a child of God, missed by their family that have people mourning them right now.
And tonight we're learning some of their names. Major Leslie Roger Leatherman of the Laurel County Fire Department was fatally injured while responding to the tornado. The department writing, his courage, commitment, and sacrifice will never be forgotten.
So how can faith communities help those affected find meaning, hope, and resilience? And how do we understand natural disasters in context of divine will and human suffering?
I think there's another issue. And the issue is that the Weather Service has, in the last few months, lessened their ability to determine what's going to happen and where it is going to happen. This, I'm wondering if we would have had the system that was in place before those cuts were made, if there would have been lives saved.
I'll say I think it's up to us as members of the religious community to express faith most earnestly by showing up. I think that, you know, our communities require and need us to provide an example of love through our action, not just our words. Again, I think there's a place and a time for all the questions, and that needs to be examined, and it will be. But again, I don't know if we'll ever have answers, and I think that's one of the things we learn in times like these too. And are reminded of that we don't have all the answers. We really don't control anything. And our sanctity, our peace comes from our faith and what we can rely on in times like these. But there'll be plenty of time for discussion about what shoulda, coulda, woulda. But right now, I think the best thing we can do is show up for one another in our community and make sure that people feel loved and connected to others that are created in God's image as well.
It's time like this when we profess a faith, but it's time like this when we have to live that faith to make sure that our words are not hypocritical. And so when faith communities gather together, whether it's just even a simple matter of writing a check or something, it's, at least that's something. But I remember, back, not to embarrass my bishop, but when Bishop Shelton came on board, there was a photograph of him at one of the hurricanes down south. And he's got a hard hat on and lumber, and he's carrying the lumber to help out. I mean, an image of that nature, something of that nature would go, I think, go far, letting people know that the faith communities are here to help. Plus opening up our churches, though those are not damaged, to allow people to rest and to feed them and things of this nature. So it's a time to step out, as Pope Francis would say, step out of the ivory tower type thing and go to the areas that need your help and help out as best you can type thing.
And from what I gather, a goodly number of people from the Louisville area went down there immediately to help reestablish the electricity, the water, so on and so forth. And now to help those folks to rebuild their lives.
Well, faith is being expressed in various different ways in all levels, even in tragedy and like these. You're seeing faith with people, as we've mentioned, who are going quickly to do what they can to help those who are in need, and that's going to continue to go on. That's people exercising their faith. You have those who have survived, who are expressing God talk and expression of faith, of gratitude that they have survived. You have families who have lost family members who are expressing faith of gratitude for the lives of the loved ones who have lost and hopes that they are in a better place. You have persons who are, while it is appropriate to focus on the help, there are persons who are asking significant faith questions. And I think that's really important for faith leaders to be ready and to prepare to respond, to listen empathetically, and to be able to share faith in a way that encourages, but also to embrace the questions. That the questions and the doubts and the fears that comes up with that is a big part of faith. It's the faith journey, the question of why. That's happening right now among persons who have been impacted, particularly those who have lost everything and have lost loved ones. And all of those, as faith leaders, we need to encourage every one of those expressions, because all of those are expressions of faith.
It's easy to recognize the presence of the divine when things are going well and everything's honky-dory, as we say. But if we need to your point, we need to be able to see the presence of the divine in our lives when something like this happens.
Absolutely.
Whether it's working through us or particularly from the divine aspect itself. So.
Well, our prayers definitely go out to those in the affected areas, and I've always feel fortunate that we're higher up down in E-Town, and things tend to go through the valleys. We've had some go to the south of us, we've had some go to the north of us, and yet we've just had the wind up, and so it's a little different. Many say, well, it's just stuff, it can be replaced, and that's true. But then you also, I think about the irreplaceable things that have family history. That's some of the things that they're not replaceable. I've got a pen and ink drawing that's on my wall that I got from my grandmother. She didn't even know who was in the picture. Turned out I found out who it is, and it is relatives. But that drawing goes back to 1834.
Wow!
You can't replace that.
That's right. No, that's right.
So, there's those types of things too. But it's important to also, like you were saying too, about the faith increase, and that's probably important rather than people who have been saying, "Oh, that's an act of God."
Yes.
Blaming God.
He gets blamed. God gets blamed quite often. Yes.
So that they're not calling it an act of God, and I noticed that as I was reading through, I was looking for that. Are they saying that or not? And they didn't.
No, I didn't see it.
So.
But that's to your point about does God allow this to happen or whatever it was. That's an issue that is misguided. I think sometimes we're thinking if God really loved us, He wouldn't do this. Well, wait a minute now. Look at all the things God has done for you, and protecting someone else may be, But it's the whole aspect of theodicy, evilness that goes on in life. So
God gives us the wherewithal to bring about in our own human way healing.
Yes.
We have about 3 minutes left in the show, so let's move on to it's Memorial Day weekend as the show airs, and finally this week we celebrate Lee Smith, a 100-year-old veteran that celebrated his birthday with a big jump.
A local veteran is celebrating their 100th birthday in a unique way by skydiving. World War II veteran Lee Smith jumped out of a plane today in E-Town. His birthday was in March, but his original scheduled date was postponed due to the weather. Smith says he was part of the Army Air Corps in the 1940s, but never had the chance to jump from a plane. This was his 4th jump in the last few years. He jumped out of almost 11,000 feet.
So wonderful story as we celebrate Memorial Day and we honor those who have died for our country. Happy birthday to Mr. Smith, and thank you for your service. We have 2 veterans with us today. We're blessed to have those. Your thoughts on Mr. Smith and his 100-year-old jump?
Well, being from the Air Force, veteran of the Air Force, I cannot even perceive jumping out of a perfectly good plane. But God bless him. More power to him in the sense of 100 years old. Oh, good heavens. But again, it calls to mind, again, the great sacrifice a lot of folks did. I just returned from France, from Normandy Beach, and if you ever get a chance to do that, you'll see what the folks, allies, have done to show us freedom to the world.
I have the height phobia, so you won't find me jumping out of an airplane either. But even to even live to be 100 is going to be monumental for me with the short lifespans of a lot of my ancestors.
So remember all the veterans.
Indeed.
And thank all the veterans for their service.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I pray that his bones are dense.
That would be helpful, yes.
That would be me. I would be 100 years old jumping out of an airplane. That would be me.
God bless.
Okay.
We're going to hold you to that, Kyle.
Yeah.
We'll send a crew with you.
But see, when I jump, I don't want to go down. I want to go up.
Well, thanks to our panel this week. Great discussion. Crusade 72 is just 13 days away, June 7th and 8th, and you can buy your Crusade for Children collector's pin and Chick-fil-A gift card. A great deal at only $4, available at any Republic Bank, L&N Federal Credit Union, New Yale Cleaners, and Louisville locations of People's Bank. Thanks to our panel this week, Reverend Michelle Penix, Lighthouse Christian Church, Dr. Reverend Kylan Gray, Creative Spirits Behavioral Health, Father Tony Smith, Archdiocese of Louisville, Rabbi Stan Miles, the Louisville Mountain School, and Richard Euler, retired U.S. Army chaplain. Thanks again for watching Moral Side of the News this week. We'll have an all-new conversation next week. And remember, Crusade for Children weekend is just 2 weeks away. Look out for your firefighters as they're out there collecting for the 72nd annual WHS Crusade for Children.